Good evening, and welcome to another animated episode of Diatribes from the Voice of Doom. Now here's your animositive and anachronistic host, Voice of Doom. Hello. Well, lots been going on, so I figured I'd put my 2 cents in and do another one. Give the people what they want, more of me, my fan. We'll enjoy this one. Speaking of fan, before I forget, Nick, if you're watching this, we have breakfast on Sunday and Easter. So if you're in town, I'd come in for breakfast because we have very good breakfast. But we will get on with other matters at hand. So Orangey was arraigned, much to the chagrin of the media and the D's. There were no riots, there were no insurrections. I'm sure they're very happy about that. It was very lackluster and low-key. And then Orangey made a speech afterwards, because I just was lucky enough when I was driving home from work to hear on the radio, and it was a good one. But we'll speak of that later, because I have other subjects to talk about, which are more important. Now, issue 1. I already said, make it a fast trial. If the prosecution isn't ready with their case, then drop it. Because the lawyers are saying we need time to prepare. Time to prepare to what? Defend yourself against vapor, against mist. There's nothing there. We need time to prepare. I mean, is everybody against him? Does everybody want to sabotage him? Including his own lawyers? December, whatever, 10th. Next hearing. So let's drag it out. Spring, summer, fall, winter. And then we'll carry on. That's beautiful. Second issue, and I already said you should have made it a fast trial. You should have started it Monday. This Monday. We get into it or drop the charges. But they don't listen to me. Second issue, change of venue. That is a moot point. There will be a change of venue because it's very difficult to have a proper judicial proceeding in a smoldering pit. And I predict that Manhattan will be a smoldering pit by December. So we really don't have to worry much about venue. So that's not a big issue. Now I want to get a little more deeply into this indictment of Orangey. The first thing that every parent should know is just a rule of thumb that if you want to raise a serious person to become a productive member of society, you do not name them Alvin. Bad start. Alvin is a chipmunk and was created in the year of our Lord, 1957, by a gentleman named Ross Bagdasarian. And if you get into Alvin and the Chipmunks, it's much more interesting than any trial of an ex-president. Ross Bagdasarian, stage name David Seville, born 1919, died 1972 at the early age of 54 of a heart attack. And from what I'm looking at, this guy changed the whole course of humanity. And I learned a lot. How many people know that Ross Bagdasarian wrote a song called Witch Doctor? I asked the witch doctor, what should I do? I asked the witch doctor about to get my whatever. Ooh, ee, ooh, ah, ah, ting, tang, walla, walla, bing, bang. Ooh, ee, ooh, ah, ah. He wrote that. He used some recording techniques to make his voice higher, and it evolved into the mega-billion-dollar industry called Alvin and the Chipmunks. Alvin and the Chipmunks was never a cartoon at the beginning. They were a band, and they didn't exist. So it's a very interesting story. There were three of them, Simon, Theodore, and Alvin. And if you get into the weeds, well, we'll do that later. We'll talk about this Ross Bagdasarian. I was wondering what he's obviously from somewhere in Central Asia, or his ancestry. He was Armenian. His cousin's name was William Saroyan. And he was an Armenian novelist that if anybody who was well-read would recognize that name. Or at least knows the name of writers like me. Okay, we won't get into that, but he comes from a very creative stock. He wrote Witch Doctor. He wrote a song called Come On to My House, Oh My House, I'm Gonna Give You Candy. Rosemary Clooney. People that I still remember from when I was a kid. He wrote some good songs and he had some Billboard Top 100 hits. But the Chipmunks started out as a band by this one guy. Then they got the idea to do a comic book, and they drew them, and it's basically they're basically a syndicated conjecture of a bunch of people. Nobody really has credit for who created the actual animated characters. It was a collaborative effort, and I had the names and I didn't write them down. I'm not going to get into that. This guy was on this Sullivan show, 1960, Ed Sullivan. What a great show we're going to have. Let's welcome our next guest, Jim Morrison. 1960, Chipmunk song, Christmas Don't Be Late, big hit. 4 weeks on Billboard Top 100, number 1. Three of them, Simon, tall, skinny, geeky, glasses. Theodore, stocky, mesomorph. And then Alvin, a small little guy with a baseball cap, and he was always causing trouble. And all three, to be fair, all three chipmunks were pains in the butts. They were left at the doorstep of David Seville because the mother was fearing a nut shortage. So you see how all this ties together? What else can I say about the Chipmunks? They had the Chipettes in the 80s when they wanted to get women inclusive. And they did all kinds of things. It became a multi-billion-dollar industry. And I'm still sure they're still selling products and franchising out Alvin and the Chipmunks to this day. But it's very interesting because they weren't an animated cartoon thing. They were a band. So it's really, if you get into this stuff, you realize that Alvin Seville, along with his brothers Simon and Theodore, who in one episode were triplets in one of their movies. They were born 5 minutes apart. But in other episodes, they were born at different times, and I go along with, I don't think they look like they're the same age, or, So let's not get too into the weeds with the chipmunks, but I think there are a lot of chipmunks out there, and they're chattering and chittering and chewing on their acorns, wondering what exactly they're going to do with this indictment, because nobody seems to be too excited about it. Especially the lefty wokesters who are chomping at the bit, waiting patiently for the hammer to fall with these charges that would be so devastating. There would be no rising up from it. None. Now, this can be a sequel to my Wile E. Coyote. The D's and the Wokesters and the CNNs and the MSNBs are going to have egg on their face again. They just don't want to learn. They're Wile E. Coyote. Everything they try turns on them. So we can know that's going to happen. Even the dipweeds on CNN are saying there's no case here. It's vapor. It's mist. You covered up a crime. Well, what's the crime? Well, we don't really know, but you covered it up. Now, give me a break. This is what you get when you put the government and the law and the prosecutors and the adults in the room, when you put them in charge from my generation and younger. Idiots. They don't do things correctly. They don't do their homework. They're not like, I don't know, anybody. Name some old guy from the 60s or 50s or 40s. William Sapphire or William Buckley. They actually think. They don't just have knee-jerk reactions and just say, I'm going to get this guy, I'll be a hero. And we'll see what a hero you are. Of course, there's equal justice under the law, but that won't apply to prosecutors who should be disbarred for wasting everyone's time and energy and money. And as long as I have a few more minutes, I'll talk about my impressions of, well, I had to harken back to 1995, a great year in America, or what used to be, when a football star was chased down the freeway by the media, and they wanted to know every move he made after that. I'm talking about O.J. Simpson for all you people that are young. He was a football star that was caught up in a murder trial because it looked like he did it, so they had to arrest him. And there was a chase, and then there was a suicide attempt, and then there was another chase, and then everybody followed the O.J. Simpson trial for a year, every single day. The trial took a year. It was on live TV on every channel. We only had a few channels back then still. And the verdict came back in an hour. And if you don't know what happened, I would suggest doing your homework yourself, because I'm not going to relive that. But when I saw the motorcade go into the courthouse in what is still Manhattan, I was hearkening back to the O.J. These people just have to follow every move he makes because history is in the making. You're watching history now. You're watching the first ex-president fly to New York to be indicted. You're watching the first ex-president get out and go into the terminal and take a leak and then get into his motorcade. You're watching the first time in history that an ex-president is driving and they have to stop for a red light on the way to the courthouse. Come on. I mean, spectacle. I mean, of course the world's gone mad, so we can expect that. But then their balloon is burst, much like a balloon was burst over South Carolina in the ocean. It's just not what we expected. We wanted big crimes. We wanted to say that he had severed heads in a closet somewhere. So I think I've said enough. I've been very informative today. You're not going to get this from anybody else. Where are you going to get a whole biography on Alvin and the Chipmunks? And it's universal parallel with Alvin and his chipmunks. You're not going to get it anywhere else. Really don't understand why more people aren't watching. But I enjoyed this one, and I think everybody else will too. So, arrivederci, and ooh-ee-ooh-ah-ah, ting-tang, walla-walla-bing-bang. Ooh-ee-ooh-ah-ah, ting-tang, walla-walla-bing-bang. Hard to do with my teeth.